How are you?
You know how...
How are you? Nice to see you. Very
Boris Johnson may not be riding a wave of popularity at home, but there is one place that holds him in high regard: Ukraine.
Well,
Yes.
unbelievable considering what you've been through. You are strong.
His staunch support for the country as it has battled against Vladimir Putin's invasions won him fans. He's visited Ukraine twice as Prime Minister, sending a powerful message of solidarity to the world. That was backed by actions. As early as January, Britain was sending NLAW anti-tank weapons to Ukraine. And since the start of the war, Britain has pledged £3.8 billion in support, making it Ukraine's second largest military partner. Although British troops aren't fighting in Ukraine, Boris Johnson has committed them in other ways. Around 8,000 personnel are taking part in exercises across Eastern Europe this summer to combat Russian aggression. And he agreed to a major training operation in the UK with up to 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers passing through every 120 days. So the war in Ukraine has put the spotlight firmly on defence, and Boris Johnson's commitment of increasing resources to Eastern Europe have put pressure on the budget. After intense lobbying by the Defence Secretary, he announced an increase in defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by the end of the decade. Critics have also used the war in Ukraine to highlight what they see as flaws in last year's defence review. Included in it were plans to cut the number of soldiers in the army by nearly 10,000. It attracted huge criticism at the time, but recent events have prompted some to argue it should be looked at again.
Could I beg with the Prime Minister to reconsider the army numbers? If there's one thing he could take away from here, with his new Chancellor, to look at securing £40 million required to reverse the cuts in our army manpower.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to stress that we value immensely the armed forces, in the sense we value the numbers of troops. If you include the reserves, they're in fact over 100,000, so 73,000 in the regular army plus 30,000 reserves. But I think it's also very important that, and I heard all the points that people like General Sanders have made, but the important thing is to have the best possible equipment.
And while the military focus is currently in Europe, 2 years ago Boris Johnson was dealing with a different crisis that would involve the military. The fight against COVID led to the biggest homeland operation in peacetime for the armed forces. Their skills were used to build hospitals, run testing and vaccination centres, deliver equipment and support ambulance services. It's been a busy time for the military under the premiership of Boris Johnson, and they weren't forgotten in his resignation speech. He thanked them for their work, which is so admired around the world. Claire Sadler, Forces News.